We're hiring for design, engineering, and product. And you can come find me afterwards if you'd like to talk about that.
All right. Thanks, Dennis. So I want to introduce Rich. Rich is actually a fellow classmate from Stanford, was introduced to me via a former speaker of Products That Count, Alexandra Watkins, who is a founder of a company that names products. And Rich is a super accomplished product exec. He's going to tell you what he does, and I'm very much looking forward to hear you tonight. Welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the chance. Good. Mic is on. Excellent. And thanks for everybody turning out on a midweek evening. And SC, thanks for giving me a little podium time. Before we jump in, by the way, this is a talk I haven't given before, so go easy on me if I lose my place. How many of us are working at companies with less than 12 people at them? Okay, good. I assume some of the rest of you are not working, but the rest of you are probably bigger companies. And how many folks are or have recently been a product manager? Ooh, okay, it's going to be easy. All right, perfect. So actually, we went back and forth on titles a few times, so I have both sets of titles here. How product managers scale your business up. I had originally thought that the thing we were going to talk about was why you'll eventually need a product manager. I don't know where the words went here, but they're gone. Okay, so the thought here is if you're at a 6 or a 9 or a 5-person startup, you don't have a product manager. There's not enough of it to go around for you to have a dedicated, specific person wearing the badge that says, I are a product manager. But when you get to, I'll claim maybe 25 or 30 employees, if you don't have one of those folks, there's a lot of really bad symptoms, which I recognize because I get the call when that happens. So we'll take ourselves down the organizational aisle of why growth is what we want, but what are the symptoms of that first entry of product management? Good. And there are giveaways for right answers because there's a quiz coming up. So lots of participation. Thanks. Okay. So a little about me. I've been doing product management since steam-powered computers. I worked at HP in the early 80s writing COBOL. Dinosaurs were still roaming Cupertino in those years. And my first product management job at Tandem was in 1988. So some of you, well, I won't ask where some of you were that year. And much of the work I do these days is around the problems of how do you organize teams of product managers? And how do you find the product management parts of Agile, because so many Agile organizations are all about getting more done instead of getting the right things done. And so I endlessly meet with folks who are building the wrong products twice as fast as they used to under Waterfall, but they're still not making any money, right? Been at a bunch of startups, wrote a book, which we're going to give some copies away. By the way, anybody who doesn't get a copy and wants one, I have the bits for the Kindle and the bits for the iOS version, because thankfully Apple and Amazon don't want to agree on file formats. So just drop me a LinkedIn or an email and tell me which of those formats you want. You can have the bits. So they're mine to give away. And I actually tilted up the first couple of product camps down in Silicon Valley. So that was like 2008, I think. Anybody been at a product camp? Great. Should do more. Okay. So enough about me. Let's set an agenda. Again, just a few points to make. What does a product manager do? Because it's not obvious and most of us don't know, and I have a chart I like to use, and it's a quiz. Why don't small startups have one? And then the problems we run into when we outgrow the fact that small startups don't have product managers, and what that looks like when we get there. Everybody okay? All right, let's go. So here's our quiz, and it's originally designed for engineers, of course, so it's an I/O diagram, and here's how it works. We put product managers in the middle, not at the top, because nobody works for product management, right? But we're in an interface situation here between the development teams, the marketing folks, and the executives. So, quiz. What's the stuff, what's the input, what's the things that flow from product management to development? Ideas are good. Requirements are good. Who was the requirements? Okay, so there's the winning answer. What else goes on the list? Specifications, good. Anybody else? Design sometimes, good. Deadlines, yep. Product roadmaps, prototypes. Sometimes implementations, and then the engineers push way back and say, don't tell me how to implement it, except when you're right. Okay, so there's a long list of things that we give, write down, share, talk about in meetings, with an infinite number of names, right? Market information, priorities, requirements, epics and user stories, if that's how you're calling them. Notice that no matter how detailed you do this, they're never detailed enough that the engineering team couldn't, if it chose, misunderstand and build the wrong thing, right? So MRDs and user stories are not a substitute for trust and understanding. What's the return code? What's the stuff that comes back out of development?
The developed product and wait for feedback.
Okay, so developed product, I'm going to actually say it's something less than that. Sorry? ETAs and estimates. Yeah, not so useful, but we get ETAs and estimates. On a good day, we get something useful back. Sorry? Working software, yeah. Even if it doesn't work, it's sometimes useful. Working software. I'm going to call it product bits because it's less than product, okay? It's the things that the engineering team decides are product, but it's not product, right? By the way, if we back up a sec, this is the big company story, because if you only have 8 people in your company, we're telling too much story and there's not enough people to fill in. So we're going to tell the big company story, and then we're going to back down to the startup. Okay, product bits because there's stuff missing, right? And let's talk about what's missing. Product management gets pulled in to deliver what to sales and marketing?
An idea of what we're selling.
Perfect. Yeah, an idea of what we're selling here. Here's the next choice, right? An idea of what it is and what we're selling and maybe who it's for. What else? They want all kinds of stuff. What do they want? Metrics. Good. What else? Demos. They especially want demos. What else? Input for collateral. Right. Good. What else? Roadmap would be good. What else? Market segmentation. Who's it for? How about pricing? Although if you just tell the sales reps to ask to collect whatever the customers are willing to pay, they're happy with that answer in the short term, right? So there's a bunch of things, segmentation, messages, features, benefits, pricing. You can see, right? You can make the list that sales and marketing wants. Notice that there's no item on the right that's exactly the same as any item on the left, okay? The only reason these fit together is because in your head, you're making them fit, right? What do we get back from sales and marketing? It's not a trick question, but it might be. Go ahead.
It's going to be profitable and we should go ahead with it.
Okay. Although we already built it, so we hope we're going ahead with it. That's exactly. You get complaints, right? You get, we politely call it feedback, but what it really, you're right, it's all those sentences that start with, what were you thinking, right? This doesn't work, right? So good time for a quiz. Anybody worked in sales? Okay, so here's the quiz. If I surveyed your sales team, because I've surveyed a lot of sales teams, and I wanted to know the number one reason we closed big deals this quarter, and the 2 reasons we didn't, what's the number one reason we closed deals this quarter? Yeah, even more? Marketing. No. I'm a great sales guy. That's exactly right. The number one reason we closed deals this quarter is because I'm a great sales guy, right? Ask any sales rep why, just ask them, right? And what are the 2 reasons we didn't close deals this quarter? Pricing, good. It was too high. And features were missing, right? So in general, there's 2 kinds of feedback we get. We learn that, if I survey your sales force, we learn that we have great salespeople. And we learn that on average, the products are all overpriced and short of features, right? Why go through that exercise? Because if the way you decide how to improve your products is to survey your sales force, right? I already know what you're going to learn, and it's not so useful. Okay, so we, product managers, need to do something else, which is reach over the top, under, through, around, into. We've got to talk directly with customers, users, prospects, lost accounts, right? We've got to get our faces out there with the real people who are going to tell us what's true and why they bought or didn't buy, and what matters, because the filtering we get through sales and marketing is so extreme that if we depend on sales and marketing to tell us anything, it's sometimes useful, but it's never complete, right? And so if you as a product manager are not spending 3.5 hours a week actually talking to folks who might use or buy your product, then you don't know anything, right? And that takes away your right to say the most important sentence you can say, which is, that's a great idea, but I talked to a bunch of customers this week, and here's what I learned from a large group of customers. Thank you for your input, right? Okay, so we got customers. There's a third group. Okay, what's the input? What do we provide? What are executives looking to get from us? Sales. They actually want us to go out and close deals and enable sales. Okay, what else?
Timelines.
Sorry? Metrics. What kind of metrics? Yeah, they're a specific kind of metrics because they're about money. Profit. What else? Timelines of release. They want to know when the next thing's coming out, because the thing that's coming out is already in the sales channel and it's doing whatever it's doing and it's not enough, right? Anybody have a CEO who comes to you and tells you, we don't need the next release because we're doing fine? Go ahead, Barry. Product vision, right? Almost all the things, by the way, they're in a longer timeline, right? So what's the timeline for a development discussion? Yesterday, right? It's usually, if you're in 1 week sprints, it's something shorter than a week, right? What's the timeline in the sales side of life? Quarter. Yeah, it's 90 minus the total number of days that have been consumed in the quarter so far, right? It's the only metric that matters. So, but in the executive side, we've got things like strategies and forecasts and commitments and roadmaps. You're basically pitching as if these are VCs funding the next product or the next release, right? And anybody know what a dog whistle is? Somebody tell me what a dog whistle is.
A whistle that usually people can't hear, but dogs can.
Right. In this case, the way it applies is the only sentences that executives can hear are sentences that are denominated in currency per unit time. Okay? When will it deliver money and how much money will it deliver and how much do we have to put in? Any other sentence that comes out of your mouth, like the dog whistle noises, is not heard by executives. Okay? At least at big companies. So you need to know in this conversation that, right? Now, you get to choose your currency depending on where you live, but it's all in unit time. Okay, what do we get back from executives? Sorry? Pressure, yeah, good. What else? Funding, right. So if we've made a good pitch, and if the product makes some sense, and if the numbers, they're going to tell us to go ahead and do the thing, right? So we get back a budget and a staff and a target. Who's the budget for, and what's the staff and budget? What do we do with that? What is it? Sorry? It's development. That's exactly right. Martin, right? So Martin gets the book here. What we're doing here is we're lobbying on behalf of development, because we're not asking for more product management heads, I can tell you, right? We're asking for engineering and test and sysops and all the other things we need to build more product to meet the target that we just put on the board. By the way, the target is the same, but the timeline is 1 quarter shorter, right? Good. So the reason to do this in the big company point is that there's no person who's born doing all three of these things and speaking all three of these languages and able to negotiate all three of these groups, right? If you come up from the engineering side, marketing and sales is probably pretty foreign, right? If you come from the marketing side and you're not technical, well, they're going to shun you and leave you out of the meetings, right? But you've got to be able to speak dollar-denominated, time-united sentences to the executives, or you don't get things funded. You got to be able to talk benefits in the language of your customers to get things sold, and you got to be able to talk tech enough that you can spec and work with your engineering team and get stuff built, right? And there's nobody on the planet who's born with all three skills. By the way, there's nobody on the planet who's born and thinks they want to be a product manager when they're young. But really important, because when we fill this job, we're always going to have somebody who can't do all three things on the first day, and we're going to have to grow them up. Okay, so enough big company stuff, right? So let's go back to our startup. Do I have a picture here? Yeah. Anybody know this startup? Silicon Valley, right? HBO series, right? Sorry? The Pied Piper, that's exactly right. So, this Pied Piper startup has no product manager, right? At least not that we can find it. And it's a meme, so I have to put up the words, right? We product manage ourselves. The 3-person startup has no product manager because
There's not enough departments.
there are no departments, right? So it doesn't have a lot of things, right? And there's not enough product management to do that we can ask someone to do product management only. And it's all sort of distributed in, what's the name of that 12-year-old kid that they brought in that broke all their code, right? You get the help you have because a 3 or an 8-person startup isn't big enough to have product management. Yes? Anybody at an 8-person product management, 8-person startup that has a product manager? Okay. Ooh. You're it. And product manager. So you wear the founder badge probably more than you wear the product manager badge, right?
It's changing a lot now that we're building more stuff.
Good. And how many people at the company?
We're at 9.
9. Okay, so we're just on the edge here. So I put an org chart up here, I think. So here's our org chart, right? Because here's our startup. Notice that the CTO reports to the CEO as far as the board of directors is concerned, but not really. Right? I put them as close as I could. And it's mostly on the development side because we have nothing to sell yet. Right? So, and since you're the founder, whatever, tell me what the CEO does in this company. Sorry? What does the CEO do?
There's a lot of external outreach, like talking to investors, sales,
Closing deals, sales, investors, what else? Research, what else? Okay, I had a list. Here was my partial list, right? Pitches, funding, business development, vision, legal, who gets the office space, who runs the payroll, right? I don't know about trips to the Office Depot to get paper, right? I don't know if anybody prints anymore, but if you did, the CEO is the person who does everything that's not on this side of the picture, right? What does the CTO or the VP engineering do? Manage dev. Good. Anything else? Argues with the CEO, very important. So I had, again, a list. Architecture, code, hiring engineers, customer pitches, hiring and code, resolving technical disputes, hiring and code, right? And these other folks do whatever assortment. I think I put something in there, but it doesn't matter, right? Code, and whatever goes with. So CEO, CTO, you could be a product manager, but there's nobody in this box that wears a badge that says product manager because it ain't big enough, right? Are you okay? Let's keep going. So, but here's what happens if you're really lucky and successful and the stars line up and your funders don't turn out to be paranoid and whatever, right? If things happen well, you grow. This is a tech company in Chicago I never heard of, but they had a company photo posted, so I took it. Who's at a company that has this photo of everybody outside smiling in the parking lot? Okay, right? We all want to get from Pied Piper to this company that has 30 or 40 or 50 people because growth is all about success here, right? It might be a lifestyle business, in which case I stay at home. But if it's venture funded, I either get to this or actually the agile, what's the agile metric? Employment velocity? You guys know about this? Jobs divided by years? Okay. You're either growing or you're out of business. So let's assume we're growing. And let's ask the question of what happens next. So here's an org chart. Notice it's got departments, right? Back to your point over in the corner, right? And I don't know if there's more than one person in any of these boxes, but as soon as you get to about 20 or 30 people, someone in the company is going to draw an org chart, right? Anybody at a 50-person company without an org chart? Okay. It happens, and there are departments formed, and all the engineering folks work in one place, right? And they probably sit in one corner of the building or the space away from the sales and marketing people, right? Why do they do that? Yeah, because it's noisy and those people keep interrupting, right? So suddenly engineering is over there, and marketing and sales are over here, or maybe we make them sit on another floor somewhere, right? Okay, so in this org chart, suddenly we have people who do jobs, right? And there's probably going to be a product manager. Let's keep going. All right, so let's think about the problems at scale. What are the breaking points when we went from 8 to 25? What's not working anymore? Communication, right? Because? That's right. I think that was my first choice here, too. Well, there's departments, right? So now we put engineering over there and we don't let anyone talk to it. But the second one, you're right. So number of conversations we can have is the square of number of employees. So the 20-person company suddenly has order of 400 conversations you can have when it's all out of control and we don't know what's going on. What else breaks? Speed. Why? More approvals, right? So that whole, am I allowed to do this? Who has to get in the room? We need the signatures of 3 living popes in order to get something done, right? Speed. Okay, what else? Anybody? All right. Sorry? Quality might go down. Yeah, quality might go up if we finally hired some folks to start putting some quality in place, because getting to version 0.5, honestly, we didn't care about quality, right? But quality might. So here's my other things. You have current customers all of a sudden, and they want things from you because they gave you money and they expect you to keep this product running and improving, right? And when they gave you money, they made a long-term commitment to you, and they expect you to take all of their requests seriously, right? Which you didn't have when you didn't have customers, right? What else? Suddenly, you've got multiple salespeople. And I don't know if you know this. I'm sorry, Barb, you've been the salesperson, right? Once you send salespeople out to find deals, they do find deals. And almost every one of the deals is huge and strategic and only needs one little enhancement, right? And it's really easy. How hard could it be, right? And so, and we need it next week. And by the way, I'm sorry about this, but I already told them they can have it, right? As soon as you have a sales force, your incentive for them is to go out and find stuff and bring things back, and they're not engineers, and they're not wanting to be engineers. And so the things they bring back are really interesting and unique. Okay, so how do we deal with that? Next thing is, suddenly your investors who are starting to see revenue ask lots of questions about the ramp. And you used to say, well, if we could close any customers, we're over the first hump. But now there's a run rate. And by the way, that better be higher this quarter, right? And the last thing I think I had is every single person in the company wants to come to someone to ask this question. Is it done yet? Right? By the way, the answer must be yes, and we must be able to ship it now. And I understand testing and docs and integration might happen later, but how hard could it be, right? So the sense of scale is one here where suddenly we're bouncing people against each other because we're bigger, because we're specialized, and we're in a world of hurt because stuff's grinding to a halt as everybody wants what they want, right? Notice this is not an engineering problem, right? This is an organizational problem. Okay, let's keep going. The good idea train, anybody know about the good idea train? Okay, the good idea train is the one that pulls into the station every day and unloads thousands of good ideas, okay? And they come from customers and executives and salespeople and executives and engineers and executives and board members and competitors, right? And every day, the good idea train unloads an entire trainload of good ideas, right? Now, we know that no matter how fast we develop, there is no way we can get all of these things built ever, right? Because our executives are so smart that they can come up with new features faster than we can build them, right? I don't know about your executives, mine always can, right? So we're unloading hundreds of good ideas every day. Honestly, most of them aren't very good. Many of them are old or conflicting or just plain dumb, right? But everybody who brings us an idea is invested in us saying, thank you, what a great idea. I love your idea. What's the next sentence we have to use? But, yeah, let me put that in the backlog and let you know when we're going to get to it, right? Because engineering can only do a couple of things. It doesn't matter what the unit of time is here, right? But we can always create 2 or 3 or 4 orders of magnitude more stuff than engineering can ever build. But luckily, each of our salespeople knows that if they just walk over to engineering and say, can you do this? Engineers will, of course, say yes, right? Okay, good. Which takes us to the next thing, which is magical thinking. Okay, anybody know about magical thinking? The backlog, which is infinite, if I need something, my magical thinking is that if I ask for it, I can have it. Right? Anybody know this one? So we're gonna have some phrases here and see if anybody recognizes them. What's the number one phrase that somebody uses in order to explain why the thing they want fits in our current sprint? Shouldn't take too long. Good. Anybody else? High priority. Yeah. So everyone will say, right? I did this walk by. I walked past the CEO's cube, and as I walked, I said, mumble, 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 I really need this thing. And our CEO told me, she said, sure, sounds good to me, right? And I wrote that down because now I have permission from the CEO to come to you and say, well, the CEO said it was important. How about we promised it, right? We know this one. How about you got it, right? How hard could it be? By the way, I always invite sales folks who tell me that it can be done in 10 lines of code to sit down and write me those 10 lines of code. Thank you for sharing. How about, we've been talking about this for months, therefore it must have gotten done somehow, magical thinking, right? How about, anybody want to translate this for me? Engineering should be more productive. What does that really mean? Yeah, it really just means I didn't get what I wanted. And I can't find any other excuse for why you didn't give me what I wanted. So it must be true that if engineering just were working hard or more productive, they would get my thing done, right? These are essentially emotional arguments. And so engineering teams would like to believe that the world is full of purely rational people, right? Who's a former engineer here? Okay. So in the engineering world, the way salespeople close deals is they take the data sheet and they show it to the customer who says, yes, those are the features I want. Where can I sign the purchase order, right? Right? In the engineering world, the way you win arguments is you marshal facts, right? Doesn't work on the sales side so much, right? So this is the emotional overload of you must have resources somewhere hidden in your pocket, right? I saw the engineers for a while and they weren't typing. So they weren't probably working, right? They were in some room wasting time on the whiteboard, and that can't be very productive. So if we would just get them typing, we could get my thing done, right? Okay, so important that you know that almost everybody who wants something has a bit of magical thinking in their head, which is because I need it, because it's important to me, because I don't get to go to club in Hawaii and take either my current spouse or my soon-to-be hoped-for spouse when I leave the other one behind. I don't get to go to club unless you tell me that you can do this random feature, which makes no sense. So you must therefore do it for me, right? We're dealing with a set of irrationality that's not just engineers looking at each other saying, well, I scored this on a spreadsheet and your thing isn't so high, right? Okay, keep going. So the prioritization laws of gravity, right? Anybody prioritized anything today? Right, so here's the laws. One, requests will always be much, much, much bigger than capacity. And so the we'll get to it later story, not so much. It's generally bad to do everything, right? Anybody have a favorite product that looks like they did everything? I have one. Anybody? How about Microsoft Office? Okay, that's 25 years of, gee, this would be a good idea, right? It's got thousands and thousands of features which nobody can find and nobody can use, right? And it's the product of, sure, that would work, right? Let's just make 2 new kinds of pivot tables. You can't A/B test everything. There's just not enough time in the universe. And basically, if you just do the scoring of all the little stories, you get crap, right? That's a technical term. Something about create, read, never mind. Right? Bottom up doesn't give you a strategy. So the prioritization laws of gravity means somebody has to step up and say, I know I'm not in charge, but here's what we're doing first and everything else is not first. Sound familiar? Okay, so therefore, somebody needs to manage the product. When we get to enough scale that we have 3 salespeople, each of whom has the company's largest deal, right? Actually, before we do that, anybody know about airline magazine syndrome? Okay, so this is where your CEO this week is on a flight on US Air, and in the in-flight magazine there's the story about Six Sigma, and your CEO comes off the plane and he says to you, well, the other guys are doing Six Sigma, let's do 8. Okay? Next week he's on the United flight, and in that in-flight magazine it has this whole thing about lean, whatever that is. And so he gets off the plane and says, we didn't finish that 6-8 Sigma thing, let's do lean. Right? Airline magazine syndrome is the shiny object in front of the CEO problem. I've been that CEO. Boy, was it painful. Anyway, but let's ask what it is that we have to manage. What do we have to do, right? So the first thing we have to do, somebody has to step up and say, there's only one backlog. Remember this? And I know you want something that's not at the top of the backlog, but there's only one backlog. And engineering needs one backlog in order to get anything done. So everybody has to come to me for their ideas for what to go next. And I know it's not popular. Thanks for sharing, right? So the first symptom of I need a product manager, I don't have one, is the company has 4 backlogs, right? And engineering has a backlog and the CEO has a backlog. Who else? Anybody? Who's got the backlogs? Every sales rep has the backlog with their thing at the top, right? Customer support has a backlog. Symptom. Okay, the next one is somebody has to stand up and actually represent users here. So as soon as we have divisions and departments, we all start to think narrowly. And the development team says it's done. Anybody know what the classic definition of done for developers is? Sorry? Works on my machine. That's exactly right. Okay. Works on my machine. The second choice is I'm kind of tired of working on this. Can we ship it? Right? But, or the person who says, well, what if we just raise prices? Because that'll handle the revenue problem. Or, we don't need the FAQs to match the product because nobody really uses it anyway, so let's ship now, right? Somebody has to stand up and say, folks are paying us money and we don't want to ship crap, right? And again, not popular, but somebody has to do a third choice. That's a great feature that we would love to have in our product, but we don't have that feature today. I know that you came out of a customer meeting and they said, gosh, this is a great product. All it needs is teleportation, right? How hard could that be? It's only 10 lines of code. And so someone has to sit in the room and say, yes, but it actually doesn't do that, right? I know sales was there. I know the CEO was there, but nope. Put it on the list. Curating the product. I know some people talk about product editors. I'm not sure I know what that is, but somebody has to say, that's a great feature, but it's not for our customer set. That's a great feature, but it goes in another product. That's a great feature, but we're cluttering things up, right? And then my last thing is, you got to work the issues. So someone in the room has to be the one who doesn't say, it's your fault. It's the person who says, yep, the APIs are down. We're offline. Let's get people together and figure out how we are going to fix it, and we can handle the blame and the post-mortem and the retrospective later, but right now let's get something done, right? The person who steps up and says, no, that's not good enough to ship, or, that's a great idea. So whether we call you a product manager, these are, for me, the 5 symptoms of somebody has to step up and do this really odd job. Notice none of these are things that get you the love and adulation of the other people in the room. That comes later. Okay, so given that, I think that's the sort of startup symptoms I see, honestly, almost every week. I get the call from some 12 to 22 person startup, and they mostly say, well, stuff's not shipping and we have too many backlogs, and what do we do? And I look around. You guys can all find me later if you're looking for work, because I'm always looking for product managers to parachute in. But this is the moment when we have to step up and give somebody that name badge and say, you're it. Congratulations. Let's figure out how to do the job. Okay, so there's one thing left to do, of course, which is let's figure out what that person has to know or have, because not everybody wants to do this, right? Okay, so, I'm sorry, here's my picture, right? Anybody feel like the sheepdog all day long trying to Move folks along. Okay, not allowed to bite, at least not often. Okay, so we want to, at your startup, everybody knows that process is bad and speed is good, and we don't want to create meetings and forms are wrong, and let's just all get a bunch of work done. But there's some just enough process that you have to put in place to get from nothing to just a little bit. When I see somebody come from HP or Cisco and parachute into the 9-person startup, they bring 7 binders full of product management process, right? By the way, they're in that job about 2.5 days, and they're out the door. There's some absolute minimum viable product management here that you got to do, which is, can we keep one backlog and put it into, you choose, Jira or Google Docs or, right? Doesn't matter, but it has to be one. You want the fewest number of meetings, but you probably need a meeting every week where the leadership gets together and either agrees to change the roadmap or agrees not to change the roadmap. And then for the rest of the week, you get to say, what do you get to say? That's a great idea. I love your idea. Maybe we really should throw our whole roadmap under the bus for this, but we only change the roadmap on Fridays. So how about if we sit that out for just a couple of days while we collect some more data. And on Friday, we'll go back in front of the founders and see if your idea really rates throwing the entire product plan under the bus because it's Tuesday, right? That's a really important meeting to have. And most weeks, nothing happens. And that's really good, right? Templates don't replace judgment, okay? So everybody has their own product management template. None of them are sufficient. You give somebody a template, they check the boxes. Not good enough, okay? And then, I don't know, anybody have good Yiddish here? They can explain to me what a mensch is? Ooh, I'm going to have to do this myself. It's a good person, right? So in Yiddish, the mensch is the person who is nice and helps out and is, self-deprecating and doesn't take all the credit. So I have an MBA, I admit, right? I go to the meetings. MBA is good, but you also want to be the emotionally supportive, thoughtful, good person who keeps it all going. I think I had a picture here, didn't I? Let's see. Yes, there we are. Okay. You guys know this movie, right? So what would you say you do? You do this, right? And last thought here is not everybody wants to do this job. I usually say that really, really good product managers do the job for about 3.5 or 4 years, and then they move on to something bigger. Hint, I've been in product management since 1987. You can figure out whether I'm smart. And there's a picture of a unicorn here. Anybody want to help me? There's a unicorn here because they're hard to find, right? So product management sounds sexier than it is. I think we've all sat down with folks who say, gosh, that's cool. You'd be in charge, and how hard can it be? And you don't have to put in long hours, and you get to make decisions. And I've heard that the product manager is the CEO of her product. What a lie. Okay, anyway, but we're hard to find, and here's my key hiring criteria. So if I'm going out there trying to find somebody to parachute in, the number one thing I'm looking for is somebody who's done this job before. By the way, I'll put out the PDFs, so happy to share the whole thing. Because this is a job a lot of people are in briefly and realize they don't want and aren't good at, my number one hiring criterion is, tell me you've shipped a couple of versions of something as the product manager and you know what you're getting into. Second choice, you've got to be technical enough that the engineering team doesn't lock the door and keep you out of the meetings. You don't have to be a coder, but, and this will vary from company to company, but anybody who's been shunned and sent out to Starbucks to get coffee because they don't want you in the meeting, not so good. I believe you have to sit with the engineering team. So if your engineering team is in the Ukraine, plan on a lot of plane time, right? Really hard to do this far away. I think you need product taste. Sometimes we put this under the label of UX or good judgment, and I don't know how to measure it. But there's nothing worse than shipping all the features that you said you were going to ship, and it looks like crap and nobody wants it, right? Not a winner. And then last, at the very bottom, I say it would be nice if you came in knowing your market already. And the reason I put that at the bottom is because almost every hiring manager says, well, I'm in hardware-based network encryption, so I have to have a product manager who's already worked for 5 years in hardware-based network encryption, or whatever it is. And we can't consider anybody who knows anything else. For me, a good product manager goes out and learns something and figures out her new product set or his new product set, and learns it, and it takes about 22 days, right? So if we only restrict ourselves to people who already know the narrow market, I'm from EMC and I only hire people from NetApp, or the other way around, you're mostly wasting your time, right? So push that to the bottom. Is there anything left on this? Yeah, okay. And I think this is a really hard job, and 2 days at somebody's training course isn't enough to make you a product manager. Choose the training course, don't care. My friend Scott Selhorst, who lives in Austin, says, a weekend at the Dude Ranch doesn't make you a cowboy, right? This is a growth job where you really need someone who can help you figure it out and case by case and teach you how it works, because the books are insufficient, especially mine, and the courses are insufficient, and the blogs are insufficient, and you got to get your hands dirty. But having somebody to help you is a huge, huge, huge step up. So if there's somebody new in your organization who's a product manager, go make some time, right? This is your chance to help somebody else have a better walkthrough than you did the first time. Take them out to lunch, check their work, talk through the situations. And if you find yourself without a mentor in your company, go find one outside, because it's the difference between success and having a new job. All right, I think I'm done. Let's see. I am. Sorry, say again? Who can be a good mentor? Anybody who's a good mentor? Where would I look for one? Yeah, so there's a bunch of meetups and product management groups. There's inside the company, I think if there's a senior product person, you should be asking for help. If there's not a senior product person, either someone on the technical side who has good market vision or somebody on the marketing side who's not technically lame is a good person to go to. It doesn't work by title. You need to look up a couple of levels and figure out who the good ones are, and buy them lunch and be their friend and ask what sports their kids play, whatever, right? Because I think it's really hard to learn out of a book, and mentoring's the difference between success and failure here. Okay, so you guys have been very patient, so let me go to the last 2 points. One is, here's how to find me. Quiz, how easy is it to get your last name as your domain, right? If you have your Wayback Machine and you buy your domain in 1995, it's really easy. But all my handles are the same. I'll give Sophie Charlotte the PDF to post. There's a video, I think, coming. Please reach out to me by LinkedIn if I can help. Please drop me an email if you want a copy of the book. I'm easy to find. And I think we're done unless there's time for questions. Okay, we've got time for a couple of questions. Anybody? I know we rolled through it pretty fast. Please.
So at the beginning, you had an interesting chart about like the inputs and outputs we get from different departments. And one thing I'm finding as we grow is interfacing with all these different people. It's a lot of context switching. Where it's used to technical and factual for many years.
Yes.
A lot more visionary with technical executives. So how do you balance that context switching? Because it takes up so much of my time right now.
It does. And just to repeat the point, there's a lot of context switching. In the course of your day, you're going to have 2 meetings on the development side and 2 meetings on the customer side and maybe 1 meeting on the executive side, and they're not in the right order. And honestly, you actually have to change your complete vocabulary. So the sentences you use and the verbs in those sentences are completely different. So you might even think about catching your breath, taking 20 seconds before you walk into any meeting and try to figure out which of those 3 meetings it is and what vocabulary you're supposed to have. Actually, there's one more distinction on the sales side. There's 2 kinds of meetings with customers, right? There's the meetings that the salespeople bring you into, and those have a very special purpose. What's the purpose of those meetings? To close the deal, okay? So your goal in that meeting is to say nothing other than the things that will move the customer from they're not sure to address whatever issue you hope is the right one. There's other meetings where the salespeople are not there and you're not trying to close. And those are the meetings where you hope to learn something, right? Because you can't sell and listen in the same meeting. So when I go into the meeting, I need to know, is it with execs? And I better restrict my language to dollar-denominated time frame sentences. Is it with customers? And I'm talking about benefits and features and roadmap. Is it with customers and salespeople? And I'm only talking about the issue they have. Is it with the development, broadly scoping, development, test, whatever, and I'm trying to get things built, right? And you've got to be able to reset your head, take a breath, take a moment, because if you end up with the wrong sentences coming out, nobody knows what you're doing, right? Good.
Do you see the role of product manager changing over the years as kind of user-centered, goal-oriented, design happened and lean startup and customer development? Is it coming closer to understanding the market, understanding the users as opposed to the technical side?
Questions, what changes over time? I think some of it's real and some of it's fad. So I think the essential job is the same. As enterprise products have gone consumer, I think we need to know more UX, but I'm willing to say I'm design blind and I need a seeing eye UX person with me to get through the meeting, right? Some of us aren't. I think the agile stuff took us off track because it made it easy for us to do the small product owner job instead of the big product manager job, and to feed the hungry agile beast with stories all day long, but forget to talk to customers. I think lean is a good recorrection from that because lean's all about getting out of the building, but lean doesn't help you build products, right? Lean helps you figure out which products you should build, and then you're right back into the soup. So we call it what we call it, but somebody has to be the person. There's a compound sentence, and it includes a customer who wants something and a product we can sell profitably and we can build it, right? And if you don't have that compound sentence in your head of customers and financial and engineering, then you're stuck in one of those bubbles and you're much less useful. So you've got to bridge the thinking in every sentence because that's where you sit. Good. One more?
When you need a second product manager,
Ah.
how many product managers you need per engineers, per marketing people?
Yeah, that's hard. I usually say that if you're in an agile model and you're trying to do the whole product manager and product owner thing, you can keep one good agile team fed and still do the outbound stuff. So that's about 10 to 1 or 12 to 1. Depends on the model. When I see it at 20 to 1, I think it's mostly a failure. So pick your number, but 15, right? 12. And most companies are understaffed on that metric. Okay, I think we're done. Let me give the mic back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rich. That was awesome.